On the 2nd of July 2026, in front of the United Nations headquarters in New York, a Tibetan activist named Lobsang Rinchen set himself on fire while holding the Tibetan snow lion flag. He died shortly after in hospital in a live stream before the act. He fiercely criticized China's newly implemented national unity and progress promotion law and called on Tibetans worldwide to resist it. The shocking scene once again thrust the Tibetan issue onto the global stage. This tragic event is a painful reminder of the deep grievances and unresolved tensions surrounding Tibet. But to truly understand the forces at play, we must look beyond politics and examine the internal contradictions within Tibetan society and its religious system itself. On the 20th of September 2017, in Dharamsala, India, at a meeting of the Tibetan government in exile, a parliament member named Damcho Yeshe publicly challenged the Dalai Lama. Damcho Yeshe is a lama from the Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism. He said that in the 21st century we are still stuck in the past. How can an elected government rely on oracles like Nichang performing spirit possession to make major policy decisions? This is not Buddhism at all. There is nothing like this in the Buddhist scriptures. In the heat of the moment, he even imitated the eerie, high-pitched voice used during Nichang oracle possessions. What people need to understand is that his target was none other than his own spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, the highest spiritual authority of the Tibetan government, in exile. The Dalai Lama's personal oracle is precisely the Nichang oracle. The entire scene was broadcast live on television and reached Tibetan communities around the world. In the days that followed, Damcho Yeshe was heavily attacked. Many Tibetans accused him of being possessed by demons and demanded his resignation. Even the 17th Karmapa, the head of his own Kagyu school, publicly criticized him. Some went so far as to call him a mouthpiece for the Chinese Communist Party. But here's the catch. Damcho Yeshe was actually a lama who had fled Tibet because of his opposition to the Chinese government. Born in 1979 in Chamdo, Tibet, he became a monk at Ganden Chikholi Monastery as a child, studied intensively at Sera Monastery for many years, and personally compiled over 300 volumes of monastery history. He was a highly educated man, dissatisfied with the Chinese Communist Party's religious policies. He escaped to India in 2001 by crossing the snow mountains. In terms of background and devotion, he was a genuine insider of Tibetan Buddhism. So why would a lama who risked his life fleeing Tibet over the Himalayas dare to attack one of the most sacred institutions of his own religious leader? What exactly is this backward and feudal Nichang oracle he criticized? And what secrets about the Tulku reincarnate lama system lie behind this tradition of summoning deities and divination? The story goes back more than 200 years, to a ridiculous and absurd war. In 1788, during the 53rd year of Qianlong's reign, the Gorkha kingdom in present-day Nepal suddenly launched a large-scale invasion of Tibet. They occupied parts of Tang, western Tibet, and looted Tashohunpo Monastery, the seat of the Panchen Lama. This bizarre invasion actually stemmed from a bitter family feud between reincarnate lamas. In the 18th century, under Qing dynasty administration, a system of theocratic rule had taken shape. Many Tulkus were not only religious leaders, but also de facto local rulers. Contrary to popular belief, early Tulkus were largely monopolized by aristocratic families. One particularly powerful Tulku family produced 5 major lamas in 2 generations. The family of the 6th Panchen Lama. The 6th Panchen Lama, Palden Yesh, was born into the prominent Jaxi D family in Sang. This family had long intermarried with powerful noble families, controlling the Tibetan Kasha government, making them one of the top aristocratic clans in Tibet. All 3 brothers of the 6th Panchen became major Tulkus. He himself, his elder brother Losang Jingpa, who became the Tiasemeling Tulku and administrator of Tashohunpo, and his younger brother Sorti Gyatso, who became the 14th Shamarpa of the Kagyu Red Hat lineage. one family produced 3 top-ranking tulkus, all officially recognized by the Qing court. And that's not all. The 6th Panchen also had a daughter who became the 8th Dorje Phagmo, Tibet's only female tulku lineage, and his nephew later became the 8th Dalai Lama. In effect, the highest echelons of religious power in Tibet were almost entirely controlled by this one family. Logically, tulku reincarnation is supposed to be about enlightened masters returning by choice, but it was suspiciously convenient that they all kept reincarnating within the same family. Even Emperor Qianlong found it distasteful, once remarking that the Dalai Lamas and Panchen Lamas passing power among relatives was no different from hereditary Mongol titles. In many cases, what was presented as sacred reincarnation was actually a small circle of families keeping lucrative positions within their own bloodlines. This nepotism led to declining quality among tulkus and ultimately triggered the Gorkha invasion. The trigger was pure drama. In 1780, to celebrate Qianlong's 70th birthday, the 6th Panchen traveled to Beijing to offer prayers. The emperor bestowed vast amounts of gold, silver, and jewels upon him. Unfortunately, the 6th Panchen contracted smallpox and died in Cheng. When his remains and treasures were sent back to Shigat, his elder brother, the Tsemeling Tulku, used his authority to seize the entire fortune. The younger brother, the Shamarpa, was furious. After repeated failed attempts to claim his share, he devised a treacherous plan. He secretly contacted the Gorkhas in Nepal, promising to split the treasures if they invaded. He even provided detailed intelligence on Tibetan defenses. The Gorkhas, newly unified and short of money, invaded in 1788. Tibet privately agreed to pay them off to withdraw. 3 years later, unable to deliver the payment, the Gorkhas invaded again in 1791. Looting Tashohampo Monastery and stripping even the pearls and corals from the 6th Panchen stupa. Faced with the enemy, Tibetan authorities consulted oracles. Local officials and senior lamas summoned spirit mediums, who declared through possession that they should not fight the invaders. As a result, over 3,000 Tibetan troops scattered without resistance. The elder brother who had seized the treasures fled first, with over 200 bundles of valuables. The door to Sang was left wide open. Remember this detail. The very tradition of relying on oracles for state decisions that Damko Yishi criticized in the video was already on full display during the 1791 Gorkha invasion. Later, an enraged Qianlong sent General Fukangen with 15,000 troops. After more than a year of fighting, they drove the Gorkhas back and nearly captured Kathmandu. The Shamarpa, who had invited the invasion, committed suicide. Qianlong, still furious, permanently banned the reincarnation of the Shamarpa lineage and ordered the Red Hat sect to convert to the Jilug school. This war exposed the darkest core of the Tibetan theocratic system. Reincarnate lamas fighting over inheritance like ordinary people, only more shamelessly. Beneath the sacred facade lay deep corruption. So how did this system where siblings and cousins all became tulkus and the government made decisions through divination become the ruling order on the Tibetan plateau? Buddhism arrived in Tibet in the 7th century during the reign of Songtsen Gampo. Before that, Tibet practiced Bin, a shamanistic religion involving worship of mountains, rivers, and spirits. Along with many primitive rituals, Bibian priests held enormous power at court, and every major decision required their divination. To counter the threat Bibian posed to royal authority, Songtsen Gampo promoted Buddhism, inviting masters like Padmasambhava from India and building Tibet's first monastery, Samye. To speed up conversion, Padmasambhava cleverly incorporated Bibuan elements. Bibuan deities were rebranded as Buddhist protectors, and many Bibian rituals, including spirit possession, divination, and even blood offerings, were absorbed. Many instruments, offerings, and practices in Tibetan Buddhism today originated from Bibuan N. This includes human bone ritual items, skull cups, kapala, thigh bone trumpets, and items made from young women's skin. although nominally donated voluntarily. The reality was often different. Even more extreme cases occurred, such as the Yuan dynasty's Yang Lianjie, a disciple of the Sakya school who looted southern Song imperial tombs and turned Emperor Lezong's skull into a ritual object. Tibetan Buddhist festivals often feature lamas wearing fierce masks and performing dances, another remnant of shamanistic traditions found across many cultures. Tibetan Buddhism also absorbed elements from Hinduism, most notably the tantric sexual practices from the Shakta tradition, where sexual union itself became a path to enlightenment. In the highest yoga tantra Anatara Yoga, British woman June Campbell, who became a nun in the 1970s under Kagyu master Kalu Rinpoche, later revealed in her book Traveler in Space how she was used as a consort, karma mudra, by the elderly lama and suffered severe abuse. Similar accounts from other women have since emerged today. Many tantric images remain visible in Tibet, especially the Yabiyam, father-mother depictions of deities like Chakrasambhara and Vajrabhava, symbolizing sexual union. In short, Tibetan Buddhism is a hybrid that took core Buddhist teachings and mixed them heavily with indigenous Bimoyan and Indian tantric elements. It deviates significantly from mainstream Buddhist doctrine and practices, which is why many other Buddhist traditions historically viewed it as unorthodox or even heretical. The introduction of the Tulku reincarnation system made it even harder for other schools to accept. Traditional Buddhism teaches that everyone has Buddha nature and that enlightenment is achieved through practice. Claiming that certain individuals are literal incarnations of Avalokiteshvara Dalai Lama or Amitabha Panchen Lama is difficult for many Buddhists to reconcile. Nevertheless, this hybrid system took root in the relatively isolated Tibetan plateau and eventually achieved dominance. Over centuries, it evolved into the Nyingma, Sakya Kagyu angelic schools. Through alliances with the Mongols, they established the theocratic system that lasted for centuries. In 1642, with the support of Mongol leader Kushi Khan, the fifth Dalai Lama became the supreme ruler, formalizing 300 years of theocratic rule. Later, the Qing dynasty's official recognition of the Dalai and Panchen Lamas further legitimized the system. The monastic establishment became the de facto ruling class. The scale was astonishing. Before 1949, Tibet had a population of just over 1 million, yet it supported 2,676 monasteries and 115,000 monks and nuns, about 12% of the total population. Among adult males, roughly 1 in 4 was a monk. In 1952, Lhasa had 37,000 residents, of whom 16,000 were lamas. A non-productive monastic class of over 100,000 people was sustained entirely by donations from the faithful. Enormous wealth flowed into temple construction and monk maintenance rather than economic or cultural development. This is a fundamental reason why Tibet declined after the fall of the Tibetan Empire and never regained its former glory. The centuries of theocratic rule were also centuries of stagnation. For the monastic elite, social progress was irrelevant as long as the flow of donations continued. This faith-based revenue stream was endless, and they naturally wanted to keep it in the family. However, Buddhist monastic rules prohibit marriage and having children to ensure stable inheritance of both political and economic power. The Tulku reincarnation system was created. The system originated in the 13th century with the Kagyu school. The first formally recognized reincarnate Lama was the third Karmapa. Other schools quickly adopted the practice. The Sakya school, also known as the multicolor school, was an exception, maintaining direct father-to-son hereditary succession. In practice, the power to recognize tulkus rested with the deceased lama's close attendants and managers. Without clear standards or oversight, recognition became a closed-door business. The sixth Panchen Lama's family producing 5 major tulkus was a classic example of keeping power within the family. The current 14th Dalai Lama's family followed the same pattern, before he was recognized. His elder brother had already been identified as a Tulku at Kumbum Monastery, and 2 other brothers were also recognized as lower-ranking Tulkus. This kind of insider dealing reached its peak with the Gorkha invasion, where brothers invited foreign invaders over inheritance disputes. After suppressing the Gorkhas, Emperor Qianlong decided to intervene. In 1792, he wrote the famous Lama Shul pronouncements on lamas, bluntly stating that hereditary transmission among relatives violated Buddhist principles. He ordered the creation of the golden urn system. Candidates from different regions and families would be placed in a golden urn, and the final selection would be made by drawing lots. One urn was kept in Beijing's Yonga Temple for Mongolian lamas, and another in Lhasa's Patala Palace for Tibetan lamas. This was a clever move to reduce nepotism and curb the power of spirit mediums. Before the golden urn, the search for reincarnations was controlled by oracles known as Chaikyong or Kuizhong spirit mediums. These mediums, who could marry and pass positions to relatives, held enormous influence. Major decisions, including Tulku recognition, often depended on their pronouncements. Bribery was common. The Dalai Lama's personal oracle, Nechang, is one such protector deity. Its temple still stands in Lhasa today. Other protectors include Palden Lamo and, at one point, Dorji Shukden, a controversial figure later banned by the current Dalai Lama. The theocratic system, while cloaked in religion, often functioned as a tool for control and enrichment, filled with corruption and absurdity, far beyond what is seen in ordinary Buddhist temples. Although the golden urn reduced some abuses, it was not foolproof. Exemptions were still possible in special cases. The current 14th Dalai Lama's own recognition in the 1930s was one such exemption, approved by the nationalist government under wartime pressures. From the Qing Golden Urn to today's disputes between the Dalai Lama and the Chinese government over reincarnation authority, the core issue has always been a struggle between religious power groups and secular authority. Back to Damko Yeshi. His bold criticism shows that even devout lamas are beginning to question the outdated elements of the theocratic system. The Dalai Lama himself announced in 2011 that he would retire from politics and hand power to the elected government. However, in practice, he still exerts significant influence over the exile administration. Many longtime exiles have grown tired of relying on oracles and spirit mediums. Frankly, as the representative of the monastic establishment, the Dalai Lama finds it difficult to abandon practices like oracle consultation because they are tied to the group's interests. Without these rituals, the flow of donations and influence would be threatened. This issue is not unique to Tibetan Buddhism. Similar tensions exist in other religions, particularly Islam. Most modernized countries have successfully implemented separation of religion and state, allowing faith to remain personal while governance stays secular. The future for Tibetans lies in preserving the valuable aspects of their culture, faith, artistic traditions, and unique perspectives on life and death. While discarding outdated political structures, theocratic rule has been proven worldwide to hinder social progress. In a future democratic China, exiled Tibetans, including the Dalai Lama, may one day return and enjoy genuine local autonomy. But that autonomy should not revive the old theocratic dreams of the Patala Palace. Instead, it should allow lamas and oracles to return fully to their religious roles, while power returns to ordinary people. That is the future Tibet truly deserves. That's all for today's story. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.